Defection is the act of leaving a country or a political party to go to another one. In this documentary, I have explained how Cuban citizens have been leaving their communist government in search of a better life here in America. The act of defecting can be a very dangerous endeavor. The 13th human right of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights states, "Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each country, and everyone has the right to return or leave any country, including his own." In Cuba, defection is deemed illegal. Most people strongly believe this is a direct violation of personal freedoms protected by the UN Declaration of Human Rights. In 1958, after the Cuban Revolution, John F. Kennedy implemented the embargo against Cuba. The embargo prevented Cuban baseball players from making it to the U.S. major leagues, which is a dream for most players. Because of the embargo, to play for the MLB, a Cuban player must leave Cuba and establish residence in another country in order to be eligible to sign a major league contract. Since 1960, there have been 80 Cuban baseball players who have defected from Cuba and made it to the majors. Most of them have gone on to have incredibly successful careers in baseball. Here are a few of their stories. The 90s was a time when many Cuban baseball players considered defecting but thought it would be too risky. However, in 1991, Rene Arocha defected, opening the floodgates for others. In the next 5 years, 19 Cuban baseball players would defect, some of the most notable being Rolando Arroyo and Orlando Hernandez. During the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, Rolando Arroyo played for the Cuban national team. He pitched lights out in an exhibition game against the U.S. While in the U.S., Arroyo jumped the fence at the Cuban practice field in Albany, Georgia, and left for Costa Rica. There he would hold scouting workouts that were attended by all 30 teams. He would sign with the Devil Rays, now the Tampa Bay Rays, and was selected for the MLB All-Star team in 1998. After Livian Hernandez defected, his brother Orlando El Duque Hernandez was eager to leave as well because of his brother's success in the majors. However, Orlando was banned from Cuban baseball because of the news of his brother's defection. He finally came up with a plan to defect in 1997. He departed on Christmas Day. He left for Cuba on a small boat. On his journey, he was intercepted by the U.S. Coast Guard in Bahamian waters. They handed him off, along with the others on the boat, to the Bahamian police. They were brought to a detention center and would later be held in court. With help from sports agent Joe Cubas, Orlando was released under a special status known as humanitarian parole that would allow him to continue on his journey to America to live out his baseball dreams. He would go on to win 4 World Series, 3 with the Yankees and 1 with the White Sox. During the 2000s, Cuba was starting to crack down on defectors. For many, it took multiple tries to leave the country. Star closer Aroldis Chapman failed on his first attempt to defect. He was invited to Havana to speak with the then-President Raul Castro, who suspended him for the rest of the National Series and left him off the 2008 Olympic team, who won gold without him. In 2009, Chapman walked out the front door of the team hotel in Amsterdam, Netherlands. He entered an automobile. He later established residence in Andorra, near Spain. Nicknamed the Rocket, Chapman holds the record for the fastest pitch ever recorded, at 105.8 miles per hour, making 7 All-Star games and winning 2 World Series.
That one hit 106. That would be a new record for the hardest pitch ever thrown.
Jose Fernandez defected in 2008, just 2 years after his dad defected after 14 tries. He and his mother tried 3 times but were sent back to Cuba. They eventually departed for Mexico rather than Miami, where they attempted the first 3 times. At one point, Fernandez's mother was thrown overboard by a wave. Thankfully, he was able to save her. They later arrived near a small town on the Mexico-Texas border, where they were able to cross as refugees. They made their way to Miami to live with Jose's father. In 2011, he was drafted by the Miami Marlins and went on to win Rookie of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, and 2 All-Star games. The 2010s was a decade of headlines, with players like Yasiel Puig defecting and making international news because of his success, along with his sensational story. Yasiel may take the title for the most incredible escape. In April of 2012, then 21-year-old Yasiel Puig stood on a beach in Cuba with 4 others waiting to be picked up by smugglers from Mexico. After hiking 30 hours to a small, secluded beach, all 5 were picked up by a ragged boat that would head to Isla Mujeres. They arrived at a port off the coast of Cancun. Yasiel and the others were loaded into a van. The group arrived at a small no-tell hotel. Puig, locked in a small room in the hotel, was in the custody of Los Zetas, known to be the deadliest drug cartel in Mexico. Los Zetas was asking $250,000 from Raul Pacheco, the potential buyer for Puig. Pacheco was a known criminal and AC repairman. He did not have this kind of money. Week after week with no pay, Los Zetas decided to up the price to $400,000. Finally, Raul agreed that he would pay the price. However, he had secretly planned to kidnap Puig from the cartel. On a call with Puig, Raul told him to expect a knock on the door late that night. Around 1 a.m., the knock arrived. 2 men dressed in black led Yasiel Puig and the others out of the hotel and into the streets of Isla Mujeres. Puig would then fly to Mexico City, where he established residence and eventually signed a 7-year, $42 million contract with the Dodgers. Randy Arozarena was born in Cuba. He defected in 2015 at just 19 years old on a small raft en route to Mexico. He would later say during an interview, "When you're on the ocean, the only thing you're thinking about and hoping for is that you get there safely," as he did, later signing a contract with the Cardinals. He played for Mexico during the World Baseball Classic, where he led the team to the semifinals and would lose to the eventual champions, Japan. He made many jaw-dropping catches and would put up a stellar stat line to make the all-tournament team. Randy Arozarena also saw great success during the 2023 All-Star Weekend in Seattle, where he was the runner-up in the Home Run Derby and robbed a home run in the All-Star game from first baseman Freddie Freeman. These are just a handful of the incredible players that have left Cuba to pursue their baseball dreams in America. Each player paved the path for many others and brought awareness to the world about the importance of their basic human rights. After 7 decades of Cuban baseball players' human rights being abused, the MLB reached an agreement with the Cuban Baseball Federation on December 19th of 2018. The agreement was signed. Cuban baseball players would no longer have to defect. An MLB team could pay the Cuban government to sign a player. Players could return to Cuba as a citizen and play in the Cuban League during the off-season. Many former defectors spoke out enthusiastically about the agreement. Jose Iglesias, who defected in 2008, said, "The next generation of Cuban baseball players will be able to sign a major league contract while in Cuba. They will be able to keep their earnings as does every other player in the world. They will be able to return to Cuba and share with their families. They will be able to play the sport that they love against the best players in the world, without fear or trepidation. Great day for Cuban baseball players." However, on April 8th, 2019, before the agreement could even take effect, the Trump administration terminated the agreement, crushing the dreams of many baseball players with hopes of playing baseball in the United States. As of December of 2024, Cuban baseball players still struggle with their basic human rights. Every Cuban baseball player should have the opportunity to sign a major league contract from Cuba legally.